Here's what's happening right now. Today's focus is the psychology of heroism, why some people ran toward danger at Bondi Beach. This story matters because it forces us to examine a fundamental question about human behavior under extreme stress. When faced with real and immediate danger, why do most people try to escape, while a small number instinctively move toward the threat? In this video, we'll walk through what happened at Bondi Beach, the latest confirmed updates about the attacker and victims, what psychology and behavioral science tell us about heroism, why this moment has resonated globally, and what experts say to watch going forward. Let's start with what we know. First, what happened? The attack occurred at Bondi Beach during a busy period when large numbers of people were present in and around the area. According to police and eyewitness accounts, the situation unfolded rapidly, giving people very little time to understand what was happening before panic set in. As reports indicate, once the threat became clear, crowds scattered in multiple directions. Many people ran, some hid, and others attempted to help those who had fallen or were injured. Amid that chaos, a small number of individuals reacted differently. Footage reviewed by investigators and reported by major outlets shows that two elderly bystanders attempted to intervene directly, using nearby objects to try to stop or slow the attacker. Their actions were brief, dangerous, and unplanned, but they occurred at a critical moment. At the same time, a responding police officer moved toward the attacker and confronted him. Authorities later confirmed that the officer shot and killed the suspect at the scene, ending the immediate threat. Police have stated clearly that there is no evidence of additional attackers and no ongoing danger to the public. The incident is being treated as isolated. What we know about the attacker: authorities have confirmed that the suspect acted alone and was killed during the police response. Investigators have been working to reconstruct the suspect's movements before the attack, as well as his personal background. Officials have not publicly released all details, citing investigative integrity and privacy considerations. However, police have stated that they are examining whether there were warning signs, prior interactions with authorities, or missed opportunities for intervention. At this stage, authorities have urged caution against speculation, emphasizing that conclusions will be based on verified evidence rather than early assumptions. Updates 1 week later. Today marks roughly 1 week since the attack, and the public conversation has begun to shift from emergency response to recovery, accountability, and reflection. Several victims were injured during the incident, some seriously. While some have since been released from medical care, others remain in recovery, facing both physical and psychological trauma. Families of those who lost their lives have begun holding private memorials. Public tributes, including flowers and messages left near the site, reflect a wider sense of collective grief and solidarity. Authorities have also acknowledged the emotional toll on witnesses, first responders, and members of the community who were present that day. Mental health support services have been made available, recognizing that trauma often surfaces after the immediate danger has passed. Why this story stands out? This was not just a story about violence in a public place. It became a story about human response. Video footage and eyewitness accounts created a stark contrast. Most people fled, exactly as safety guidance would advise, while a few individuals moved toward danger, accepting personal risk in an attempt to protect others. Those moments quickly became central to how the event was discussed, shared, and remembered. The psychology of running toward danger. Psychologists who study behavior under extreme stress emphasize a crucial point. There is no single universal response to danger. The familiar phrase fight or flight oversimplifies reality. In high-stress situations, people may freeze, flee, comply, dissociate, or confront a threat, often without conscious thought. Which response activates depends on many factors, including prior experiences with danger, personal values and sense of responsibility, whether others, especially vulnerable people, appear at risk, how quickly the brain processes the threat. In moments like this, the brain's rational, analytical systems are often overridden by instinctive responses driven by emotion and perception. Many people who act heroically later report something striking. They did not weigh options or calculate risk. They acted automatically. Experts refer to this phenomenon as situational altruism, a state in which protecting others becomes the dominant instinct, even at significant personal risk. Why heroism is inspiring and complicated. Public reaction to these events tends to follow a predictable pattern. There is admiration, gratitude, and a strong desire to honor those who intervened. These stories offer reassurance that courage still exists in moments of fear. But experts also stress the need for caution. While acts of heroism can save lives, expecting untrained civilians to intervene in violent situations can create dangerous social expectations. Intervention carries high risk, and most people lack the training needed to assess threats safely. This tension matters. Heroism can inspire, but systems should never rely on it as a substitute for prevention, preparedness, and professional response. Why this matters beyond Bondi Beach. For victims and their families, the impact is immediate and lasting. Injury, loss, trauma, and long-term recovery. For institutions and authorities, incidents like this raise difficult questions about early warning signs, public safety strategies, and response protocols. Every detail is examined for lessons and potential failures. And for the broader public, stories like this subtly shape expectations. They influence how people think about safety in public spaces, how much responsibility individuals should carry, and how much trust is placed in institutions during moments of crisis. Even people far from the event may feel ripple effects through policy debates, security measures, or public discourse. The expert risk and scenario view. From a risk analysis perspective, experts generally consider three possible paths after events like this. First, the situation stabilizes. Attention turns to investigation findings, mental health support, and targeted safety improvements. Second, concern grows gradually. Public pressure increases, inquiries expand, and institutional responses become more formal and structured. Third, the incident becomes part of a broader pattern. If similar events recur, the focus shifts away from individual actions toward systemic reform, including legal, operational, or cultural change. Which path unfolds depends largely on what happens next. What happens next? In the short term, investigators continue examining evidence, witness accounts, and timelines. Authorities release findings as appropriate and correct misinformation when necessary. In the medium term, attention shifts to outcomes, whether recommendations lead to change, whether public confidence stabilizes, and whether new safeguards are introduced. And in the long term, the central question becomes whether this event is remembered as an exception or as part of a pattern that reshapes how societies think about safety and response. A helpful way to think about this. Looking at similar incidents in the past, one pattern appears consistently. When responses are coordinated, transparent, and timely, impacts tend to narrow and recovery is faster. When responses are delayed, fragmented, or overly symbolic, uncertainty grows and consequences spread. The lasting significance often depends less on the moment of crisis and more on what institutions do afterward. Practical guidance. For those directly affected, experts emphasize following official guidance, relying on confirmed information, and seeking professional support when needed. For those not directly involved, the most useful approach is to focus on verified updates, official findings, and concrete policy responses, not speculation or viral narratives. For everyone, clarity matters. Avoid assumptions. Track confirmed developments and recognize that investigations take time. The now brief takeaway. This story matters because it sits at the intersection of human instinct and systemic responsibility. Acts of courage can change outcomes in critical moments, but lasting safety depends on preparation, prevention, and coordinated response, not on expecting individuals to run toward danger. The most important thing to watch now is what changes next: investigative findings, institutional actions, and how communities adapt in response. That's your Now Brief. If this helped you understand what's happening and why it matters, like the video and share it with someone who should see it. Subscribe to stay informed. I'll see you next time.